Story 1. It started on a Thursday evening when I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, just killing time while waiting for my pasta to boil. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just browsing out of habit, when I saw a post that made me stop. It was titled, "Everything Must Go Fall Decor Mega Deal," and the photo showed a large plastic container, the kind you store Christmas stuff in, overflowing with fall-themed decorations. Pumpkins, faux leaves, table centerpieces, string lights, all that stuff. The price? $20. That's it, $20 for the whole thing. I'm not the type to jump on online deals without thinking, but this one felt like a steal, especially since I had just moved into my new apartment in Tacoma and wanted to make the place feel a little more festive. The post was from a guy named Tyler, and at the bottom of the ad, it said, "Also selling other items. Clearing out house. Check my profile." So I clicked into his profile. It was pretty bare bones. His profile picture was just a hat. Seriously, a gray trucker's cap worn low so you couldn't see the guy's face. His cover photo was a blurry shot of a lake. Everything else on his profile was private, but he did have a few more listings. A supposedly new iPhone for $700, some women's clothing, and a box of old Christmas ornaments. Kinda random stuff, but I didn't think much of it. I messaged him and asked what kind of decorations were in the container, and he got back to me immediately. He said there were all sorts. Tableware, porch stuff, even some indoor lights. I told him I could come that night if he was available, and he replied, "I'll be home around 9. Come by then." He sent the address. I looked it up right away on Google Maps. The house was in a neighborhood I didn't know well, kind of on the edge of town. It didn't look bad or anything, just average. Small front lawn, 2 cars in the driveway in the street view photo, blinds drawn on the windows. The place seemed fine, but I wasn't about to go alone. I called my best friend Kira and asked if she'd come with me. She agreed right away because she's the kind of friend who always shows up when you need her, and also because she's just as nosy as I am. I picked her up around 8:30, and we started driving across town. It was already dark, and as we got off the highway and entered the part of town where Tyler's house was, things got noticeably quieter. Fewer streetlights, more shadows. The houses were a bit more spread out, and a lot of the porches weren't lit. Kira was making jokes to lighten the mood, saying stuff like, "This is how horror movies start," and I laughed, but I also felt a little uneasy. About 5 minutes before we got there, my phone lit up with a message from Tyler. "When you get here, you can come right in." I showed it to Kira, and she frowned. "That's weird," she said. I agreed. We both decided we'd ring the doorbell anyway. When we pulled up to the house, something felt off immediately. There were no cars in the driveway, even though the listing made it seem like someone lived there. There was a light on in one of the windows, but the blinds were shut tight, and the glow was barely visible. I messaged him, "We're here. Can you come to the front?" As we sat there waiting in the car, we both saw it. One of the blinds in the front window shifted, just a bit, like someone was peeking through. It closed again just as quickly. Then a few seconds later, the front door opened slowly, and I got another message. "I'm at the door. You can come in." End of 4. Kira and I sat there for a few seconds, just looking at the open front door. It wasn't wide open, just enough for someone to have pushed it ajar. I remember feeling this tight little knot in my stomach that told me not to go in. But at the same time, I didn't want to be dramatic. Maybe this guy just didn't like answering the door. Maybe he thought he was doing us a favor by telling us to come in. Either way, we both got out of the car slowly and walked up the front path. I called out, "Tyler?" but got no answer. Kira whispered, "I don't like this," and I just nodded. We stepped up onto the porch, and I called his name again, louder this time. Still nothing. Then, from inside, we heard a deep voice say, "Yeah, I'm here. Just come in." It didn't sound welcoming, it sounded hollow, like the voice came from a bigger guy, but there was no warmth behind it, just flat, low, and a little too eager. I opened the door all the way, keeping one hand on it just in case we needed to run. Right away, the smell hit us. It was this awful mix of stale air and something else, something sour and thick that stuck in your nose. The best I can describe it is like walking into a room where something old and damp had been sitting for way too long, mixed with cheap perfume and that weird cottony smell you sometimes get in hospitals or nursing homes. We stepped inside, just barely. The hallway was dark, the kind of dark that swallows up your vision. Only a small light in the next room was on, casting this dim orange glow. Tyler's voice called out again. "It's in here.com, check it out." We hesitated, and Kira whispered, "I don't want to do this." But I was already moving forward, slowly, one step at a time, until we both reached the doorway of the living room. That's when things got worse. The smell in that room was 10 times stronger. I had to swallow hard to keep from gagging. The carpet was a weird faded pink color, the kind that might have been red decades ago, and it was stained in places that looked like water damage, or worse. The furniture was old, like really old. Floral couches that looked sunken in, yellowing lamps, and dusty picture frames that faced away from the room. In the center of the room was a big red plastic container with a green lid, which Tyler was standing next to. I finally got a good look at him. He was taller than I expected, maybe mid-40s, wearing jeans and a jacket. But there was something off about his posture, like he didn't know how to stand naturally. His face was blank, and he didn't smile. "Go ahead," he said. "You can open it." I noticed right away that the container didn't match the one in the Facebook photo. Different color, different shape, and this one looked older, like it had been sitting around for years. I asked him, trying to sound casual, "Could you open it? I just want to see what's inside before I come closer." He looked at me for a second, then said, "You're no fun," in this slow, drawn-out tone that gave me chills. I took a step back, nudging Kira behind me. Tyler bent down and lifted the lid. That's when the smell hit us full force. I have no idea what it was, but it was sharp, and rotting, and wrong. Kira gasped and grabbed my arm. I didn't wait to see what was inside. I said, "We have to go," and we both backed up fast, out of the room, down the hall, and out the front door. I didn't even close it. We got in the car and I hit the gas. We didn't talk until we were a few blocks away. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting him to be following us, but he wasn't. The house just disappeared into the dark behind us. We never found out what was in that container, but I know it wasn't decorations, and I never went to anyone's house from Marketplace again. Story 2. I had the day off from work, and it was one of those rare Wednesdays in late October when the weather was cool but not freezing, and the sky was completely overcast. I was living in Sedona at the time, just temporarily for work, and I'd been meaning to check out more of the hiking trails in the area. I'd gone to a few already, but that morning, I decided to try the Cathedral Rock Trail. Everyone talked about how beautiful it was during the fall, and I figured I'd have the place mostly to myself since it was a weekday. I packed some water, a protein bar, and my phone, and drove about 20 minutes out to the trailhead. There were only a few cars in the parking lot, which was exactly what I wanted. Peace and quiet. I started hiking, and for the first 20 minutes, everything was perfect. The air smelled like pine and dry leaves, and there was this stillness in the air that made everything feel calm. I passed a couple with their dog coming down the trail, but other than that, it was just me. About halfway up the trail, I stopped to take a photo of the view, and that's when I noticed her. A woman, probably in her 50s, was standing just off the trail, about 30 feet away. She wasn't hiking. She was just standing there, slightly behind some trees, looking straight at me. I thought maybe she was looking past me at the view or something, but when I looked around, there was nothing behind me except shrubs and rock. I gave a quick wave, trying not to be rude, and she didn't wave back. She just turned and walked slowly back into the woods, completely silent. I stood there for a second, feeling a little weird about it, but I told myself maybe she was just out for a walk and didn't feel like talking. I brushed it off and kept going. The trail got steeper as I climbed. and about 15 minutes later, I reached a spot near the top that had a wide, flat rock where people usually rest. I sat there for a while, drank some water, and checked my phone. That's when I looked up and saw her again. The same woman. Same short gray blonde hair. Same brown jacket. She was standing a little closer this time, maybe 20 feet away, not moving, not blinking, just staring. There was something about her posture that felt wrong. She didn't look curious or friendly or even annoyed. It was like she wasn't really looking at me as a person, more like she was waiting. I pretended to check my phone again and didn't look up for a while, hoping she'd leave. And when I finally glanced back, she was gone. I didn't hear any footsteps, no leaves crunching, no movement at all. It was like she just vanished. My stomach felt a little tight, but again, I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she was just someone's relative staying nearby. Maybe she had some sort of condition, or maybe she just liked the woods. I stood up and decided to head back down the trail. I hadn't seen any other hikers for a while, and the clouds were starting to get heavier if it might rain. I moved faster than I had on the way up, keeping my eyes on the trail. But every so often I'd glance around me, half expecting to see her again. And then I did. Just before I reached a bend in the trail, I looked to my left and there she was, standing between two tall pine trees. This time she was much closer, maybe 15 feet, and still just staring. I froze. I didn't wave, didn't say anything. I just stared back for maybe 5 seconds, and then she turned around and walked away again, slowly, disappearing behind the trees. At that point, I stopped trying to come up with excuses. Something about this wasn't right. I didn't know who she was or why she was watching me, but I suddenly felt very alone, and very small, and very unsure of what I should do next. I made it back to my car without seeing her again, but the whole hike down I kept checking behind me, listening for footsteps that never came, feeling like the trees were pressing in closer than before. The silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. .it felt like something was holding its breath. When I got to the parking lot, I didn't waste time. I got in, locked the doors, and drove straight home. I told myself I was just being dramatic, letting my imagination get carried away. But deep down, I knew something about the way that woman kept appearing and staring had shaken me. That night, I went out for drinks with a girl I was seeing. I told her about the woman on the trail and she laughed, said maybe it was a ghost checking me out, trying to haunt the last decent man in Arizona. I laughed too, and after a few pumpkin beers and a baseball game in the background, the tension from earlier started to fade. We said goodnight, and I went home around midnight. I brushed my teeth, locked the doors, double-checked the windows just in case, and went to bed. I'm usually a really heavy sleeper. It takes a thunderstorm or a fire alarm to wake me up. But that night, something pulled me out of sleep, like a rope around my chest. I opened my eyes, and for a second, I didn't know why I was awake. Everything was dark and still. I was lying on my back, covers pulled up, room completely silent. That's when I saw her, standing at the foot of my bed, just standing there, not moving, not blinking, just staring. It was the same woman from the trail, same short gray blonde hair, same shape, same presence. I couldn't breathe. My body froze in this awful stillness, like my mind wanted to run but my muscles couldn't respond. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. My voice cracked when I tried to say something, but no sound came out. She didn't move, just stood there, almost like she was waiting for me to recognize her. And then, without a word, she turned around and walked out of the room. I sat up, gasping, completely drenched in sweat. I turned on my lamp and grabbed the knife I keep in the drawer next to my bed. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. I got up and checked the entire apartment. Every light, every closet, under the bed, behind the couch. Nothing. No sign of her. I didn't know what to think. Was I dreaming, hallucinating? It felt too real, too detailed. The smell of her, like old perfume. The way her eyes locked on mine. The exact same figure from the woods. I called my dad, just needing to hear a voice. He answered groggily, and I told him everything. He said it sounded like a sleep paralysis episode. Maybe my brain just pulled her image out of memory, because I'd been thinking about her earlier. I tried to believe that. I wanted to believe that. I barricaded my bedroom door with my dresser that night and didn't sleep until the sun came up. 2 days later, I got a call from my mom. She told me that her older sister in Germany had passed away. I'd never met her. She and my mom had been estranged for most of my life. But when my mom got home from the funeral, she showed me the prayer card with my aunt's photo on it. And I swear to you, it was her. The woman from the trail. The woman at the foot of my bed. Same hair. Same face, same eyes. I had no explanation. I still don't. But whatever it was that followed me home, I don't think it meant harm. I think maybe it just wanted to be seen. Maybe it wanted to say goodbye. Story 3. Andre and I had talked about that house for years. It was the creepy old Victorian at the edge of town in Bangor, Maine. The one with the crooked shutters and the half-collapsed fence that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1960s. Every local had a story about it. Something about the last family that lived there, or weird lights people saw through the windows. But none of the stories ever lined up. It was one of those places you dared your friends to go near on Halloween night. And Andre and I finally decided we'd do it. We were both 22, bored out of our minds, and Halloween was just a few days away. The weather was cold but clear, and we figured why not grab a couple of flashlights, sneak in, and check it out. No one lived there. Everyone knew that. We parked a few blocks away around midnight, just to avoid drawing attention. The street was one of those older ones with no real lighting. So once we left the car and turned on our flashlights, the only light came from the beams cutting through the fog. The house was even bigger up close. The front yard was overgrown, weeds everywhere, and the porch looked like it might cave in if we stepped on it. We didn't go through the front. Instead, we walked around the back, hoping to find a quieter way in. One of the basement windows had already been busted open, so we climbed through. The air inside was thick, like it had been trapped for decades. Dust floated through our flashlights, and the smell was old wood, mold, and something faintly sour underneath it all. The weirdest thing was that the place still had furniture. It wasn't trashed like you'd expect from an abandoned house. It was just old, like someone had left in a hurry a long time ago and never came back. I wandered through the ground floor while Andre checked out a side room. The place was laid out like a maze. Tiny rooms branching off in all directions. Narrow doorways. Too many walls. It was like the house was trying to confuse you. I found a tiny hallway near the kitchen that had a few closed doors. I opened one and saw a staircase leading down. A basement. I called out to Andre and told him where I was, but he didn't answer. I figured he probably didn't hear me, so I decided to go down by myself. The stairs creaked with every step, like they were warning me. About halfway down, I noticed a faint glow at the bottom. I turned off my flashlight, thinking maybe Andre was already down there with his on. But it wasn't a flashlight. The light was too soft, too warm. When I reached the bottom, I peeked around the corner and saw the source. 2 tall candles sat on a wooden table in the middle of the basement, and next to them was an old rocking chair. It was moving. Slowly. Someone was sitting in it. I couldn't see their face. The chair was angled away from me, facing the far wall, and all I could see was a hand resting on the armrest. Pale, still, and definitely real. My body froze. My brain was screaming to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I don't know how long I stood there watching that chair gently rock back and forth, but the sound of the creaking wood felt like it was getting louder with each pass. Finally, my survival instincts kicked in, and I started backing up the stairs, trying to keep each step quiet. I didn't dare turn my flashlight back on. I just moved, one slow step at a time, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I was almost at the top, one of the steps creaked loudly enough to echo. I stopped. I held my breath. Then, everything went dark. The candles had gone out. I don't know if it was the draft or something else, but the moment those candles went out, the entire basement just disappeared into blackness. I stood frozen on the last step, gripping the banister so hard my fingers hurt, trying to decide whether to move or stay perfectly still. It was that kind of darkness that feels like it's pressing in on you, like the air itself is thicker. I turned and quietly made my way up the final few stairs, praying every board stayed silent. When I reached the top, I gently closed the basement door and stood there for a second, breathing through my nose because I was afraid even my breath might echo too loudly. I didn't know what I saw down there, who that was, or how the candles had gone out, but I knew I needed to find Andre and get out. The house was still silent, no footsteps, no voices. I crept through the cramped halls, my flashlight turned back on but angled low, lighting just enough to see where I was going. I found the stairs leading up and quietly called his name. Andre? Still nothing. I went up, one careful step at a time, and when I reached the top, I finally saw him. He stepped out of one of the dark rooms and gave me this confused look, like he didn't know why I sounded so freaked out. I whispered, "There's someone in the basement," and I could tell by the way his expression changed that he finally realized I wasn't joking. He followed me down the stairs without asking any more questions. We were walking fast now, no longer trying to be subtle. I just wanted out. But as we turned the corner near the narrow hallway that led to the back door, we both stopped dead in our tracks. Right in front of the basement door was a silhouette, not moving, not speaking, just standing there in the dark. There was no light behind him, so we couldn't make out a face or even details. Just the solid shape of someone tall, blocking our only way out. My whole body went cold. I couldn't even think straight. I grabbed Andre's arm and whispered, "Go." That was it. No plan, no clever distraction. Just go. We turned and ran toward the front of the house, shoving past furniture and doorways like we didn't care about the noise anymore. I don't even remember the path we took. It felt like the house kept twisting around us, like the halls were different than before. But somehow, we made it to the front room and burst out through the door into the cold night air. We didn't look back. We just ran. We ran all the way to the car, got in, slammed the doors, locked them, and sat there for a second in total silence, catching our breath. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the keys and started the engine. Andre looked at me and just said, "What the hell was that?" And I didn't have an answer. I drove us out of there as fast as I could. Neither of us said much on the way home. I think we were both trying to process it, trying to figure out if it was some squatter, some setup, or something worse. But the thing is, that house isn't listed as owned. No one's lived there for years, and when we looked it up later, we found out the property's been in probate limbo since the late 90s. No one should have been there, and yet someone was. I never went back. Neither did Andre. We don't even talk about it much anymore. But I still see that shape in my head sometimes. That silhouette perfectly still in the dark, as if it had been waiting for us all along.